Hello, Bible reader. It is Friday, July, 24th, and our texts for today come from Genesis 25 and 26, and then mark the end of chapter 14. In Mark, at the end of chapter 14, we get, it starts with an interesting section as Jesus is betrayed, and at the end of that section is something unique to Mark. Let me just grab my Bible here. It says, "A certain young man was following him, wearing nothing but a linen cloth. They caught hold of him, but he left the linen cloth and ran off naked." It's an unusual detail to include in a gospel, but Mark is trying to make the point that people were leaving everything they had to follow Jesus. And now at the end, they are leaving everything they have to leave Jesus. They are as excited as they were to join him. Now they are desperate to leave him. It's Mark's way of really underlining how clueless everyone is as to what this means. What it means that Jesus is Messiah. The messianic secret that's been held and referred to by Mark throughout his gospel. Now we see how the ignorance of followers of Jesus really makes this moment what it is. A moment that is for Jesus a completely lonely, awful, as separated from God and God's people as any human could be. And so Mark really drives that point home. Okay, the other thing is we're getting into a part of Genesis that I especially appreciate because of how much I resonate with the character of Jacob. We're leaving the part of Genesis where it's Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, and we're now entering stories that are centered on Jacob. And Jacob is such a human, flawed figure. I think most of us, especially Lutherans who recognize we are saint and sinner at the same time, that is Jacob's experience. Claimed and chosen with a future that is promised by God, an inheritor of the promise made to Abraham, but at the same time, a rascal. And so how does God make sense of that? Does God keep God's promises with a guy like Jacob, a schemer? I'm going to read just a little bit from Brueggemann here. First, he quotes 1 Corinthians, Paul's letter to the Corinthians. "God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing the things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God." And then Brueggemann says, "The narrative about Jacob portrays Israel in its earthiest and most scandalous appearance in Genesis. The narrative is not edifying in any conventional religious or moral sense. Indeed, if one comes to the narrative with such an agenda, this narrative is offensive. But for that very reason, the Jacob narrative is most lifelike. It presents Jacob in his crude mixture of motives. This grandson of the promise is a rascal compared to his faithful grandfather Abraham or his successful father Isaac. The affirmations of faith in this narrative are especially robust. The narrator knows that the purposes of God are tangled in a web of self-interest and self-seeking." I love that the purposes of God get tangled up in a web of self-interest and self-seeking. That's what humans do. That's what Jacob does. Self-interest, self-seeking, but at the same time claimed and chosen by God to be a vessel of blessing. And so read these stories about Jacob with that in mind, that he is chosen, but also flawed. I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us, at all times and in all places.